It'd been measured a lot against, singing it, and there's nothing I can. And how many albums they got? It's like, I have a couple.
For years, Axl Rose vanished. No concerts, no interviews, no explanations. The world that once screamed his lyrics was left in silence. Rumors filled the void. Plastic surgery, madness, cult retreats. But in 2025, at 63 years old, he walked back on stage. The crowd gasped. The man who once burned with rebellion now looked like someone else entirely. Behind the locked gates of his $5 million Malibu mansion, Axl had built a fortress of secrets. Inside were machines and memories, a collection of supercars worth millions, a private recording studio no journalist had ever entered, and journals filled with lyrics no one had heard. For a decade, he'd been creating something no one was supposed to see. People whispered about therapy, exorcisms, even disappearances. But what truly happened behind those walls was darker, deeper, and more human than anyone imagined. The man who once ruled the world of rock had been hiding from it, and from himself. He'd seen everything: success, collapse, heartbreak, addiction. He'd threatened suicide on his wedding night and once collapsed on stage in Buenos Aires. His voice, once a weapon, had turned into a whisper. But this story isn't about a comeback. It's about the journey that led him there, from a broken home in Indiana to the screaming arenas of the world. From a boy who was kidnapped before he could walk to a man haunted by memories he could never escape. William Bruce Rose Jr. was born on February 6, 1962, inside a small hospital in Lafayette, Indiana. His mother, Sharon Lintner, was only 16, still in high school, barely a child herself. His father, William Rose Sr., was 20, already known around town as charming, unpredictable, and dangerous. The pregnancy wasn't planned. In small-town Indiana, it was scandal. Sharon dropped out of school and married the man she barely knew. For a short time, they played house. A baby, a rented home, a fragile dream. But within 2 years, the dream shattered. In 1964, without warning or explanation, William Sr. disappeared. He walked out of their lives and never came back. No goodbye, no letter, just gone. Sharon was devastated but refused to speak his name again. When neighbors asked, she said he was dead. To her, maybe he was. She remarried soon after, and a Pentecostal preacher named Stephen Bailey. He was strict, religious, and cold. He adopted little William, changed his last name to Bailey, and told him to forget the past. From then on, the boy was known as William Bruce Bailey Jr. For 15 years, Axl believed Stephen Bailey was his real father. The truth sat buried in a drawer hidden behind insurance papers and silence. He grew up in a world of rigid church rules, Bible verses, and fear of sin. The sound of a belt striking skin became as familiar as Sunday sermons. No one around him knew the chaos forming inside. Axl's mother smiled in public, prayed at night, and cried quietly behind closed doors. Her son watched everything. He learned early that love could hurt, and that silence could be deadly. When Axl turned 17, the truth revealed itself by accident. While searching through a drawer, he found old insurance papers, documents with a name he didn't recognize, William Rose. At first, he thought it was a mistake, but when he asked his mother, her face turned pale. She tried to deflect, but it was too late. That single discovery shattered 15 years of belief. The man who had raised him wasn't his father. His real father had left, lied, and been erased from memory. It felt like the world tilted. He later described it as an earthquake inside my soul. That night, he couldn't sleep. He felt betrayed by everyone, by his mother, his family, and the God they preached about every day. But the story went deeper. Axl learned that his biological father had kidnapped him when he was only 2 years old. For decades, his mind had blocked the memories, but in his 30s, during therapy, fragments came back. Memories that weren't dreams. He remembered a needle, a sting, someone touching him, and something violent happening to his mother. His body remembered even when his mind didn't. When he later confronted his grandmother as an adult, she confirmed it all. Court records from the 1960s revealed that Sharon had filed charges against William Sr. for kidnapping and abuse. Everything Axl feared was true. The realization left deep scars. He wasn't just a kid with a broken home. He was a survivor of something unthinkable. From that day on, he never trusted easily again. The boy who once prayed for love now built walls instead. If Axl thought losing his father was painful, life under Stephen Bailey was worse. Bailey, a strict Pentecostal preacher, ruled his home like a dictator cloaked in religion. They went to church 3 to 8 times a week. Bible study lasted for hours. Questions were punished. Doubt was a sin. If Axl looked at the wrong thing, he was whipped. If he questioned a sermon, he was made to fast. If he disobeyed, the belt came out. Bailey called it discipline. To Axl, it was terror. Music, movies, even laughter were monitored. Some weeks, a TV appeared in the living room. The next, it was smashed because Bailey said it invited Satan. Women were painted as evil. The outside world was dangerous. Behind the walls of their home, the preacher's sermons turned into violence. Bailey beat the children and molested Axl's sister. Once he locked her in a dog cage. Sharon looked away, trapped in fear herself. The house didn't feel like a home. It felt like a battlefield disguised as a church. For Axl, survival meant disappearing inside himself. He learned how to say what people wanted to hear, how to hide pain behind politeness. He split himself in two, the obedient son and the raging soul buried beneath. Years later, therapists would say the abuse rewired his brain. It made him distrustful, paranoid, and obsessive about control. But back then, he was just a boy praying to a God who never answered. Despite everything, Axl found one small light: music. At 5 years old, he joined the church choir. His voice stunned everyone. It was pure, haunting, almost angelic. Soon he was performing with his siblings as the Bailey Trio. They sang hymns while the congregation clapped, unaware of what was happening behind closed doors. But the church that praised his voice was the same one that punished his thoughts. He once said the first time he was slapped was for looking at a woman, a moment that stayed with him forever. By his early teens, Axl began to rebel quietly. He questioned sermons, mocked hypocrisy, and refused to conform. He saw the church as a place full of secrets and sinners pretending to be saints. Music became his escape, the only place he could express himself without punishment. His anger and confusion started to take shape in melody. Even as a child, his voice carried pain, the kind that can't be faked. In 1976, when he was 14, Axl discovered those insurance papers that revealed Stephen Bailey wasn't his real father. It was the final crack in his fragile world. He went into a rage. He tore apart furniture, screamed, and destroyed everything in sight. His mother called for help, terrified of her own son. Authorities took him away and placed him in a mental institution. Doctors labeled him manic-depressive. They prescribed lithium and called it a cure. Axl didn't agree. He said later, "I just felt things more than other people." It was the first time the system tried to define him, to box in emotions that came from a lifetime of silence. He spent weeks under observation, then was released back into the same home that broke him. The difference was now he knew the truth, and he couldn't unlearn it. By 15, Axl found his outlet: music. He formed his first band, simply named Axl, playing covers of Aerosmith and Nazareth in Lafayette's dirtiest dive bars. He was still a teenager, surrounded by drunks twice his age. The shows were wild, sweaty, loud, full of fights and chaos. One night, hecklers started throwing bottles. Axl threw them back. The police arrived, and he was arrested for public intoxication. It was his first arrest, but far from the last. Between 1977 and 1982, Axl was arrested more than 20 times. Fighting, drinking, disorderly conduct. His rage always found a way out. But through the chaos, he began to find himself. Every scream into the microphone felt like therapy. Every song was a confession. His reputation grew. The wild kid from Lafayette with the voice that could shake walls. Teachers called him troubled. Friends called him crazy. But when he sang, people listened. Music gave him something no one else had: control. In 1979, when he was 17, everything nearly ended. A family friend accused him of rape after a party. There was no evidence, and the charges were dropped, but the damage was done. Lafayette turned against him. The rumor stuck, and the shame nearly killed him. He spiraled. Days without sleep, weeks without direction. One night, he swallowed a handful of pills. He later said that was the moment he almost didn't make it. His former manager, Doug Goldstein, confirmed the attempt years later. After that, Axl shut down completely. He stopped leaving his room, He stopped talking. He wanted to disappear. Despite scoring in the top 3% on placement tests, he dropped out of Jefferson High. He took a job stocking shelves at a grocery store, saving every dollar for one goal: to leave Lafayette forever. In 1980, at 18, Axl met Gina Saylor, his first real relationship. She was 15, rebellious, and just as lost as he was. They fell into a cycle of love, jealousy, and fights that lasted 6 years. Gina introduced him to marijuana, then LSD. His first acid trip lasted a week, leaving him paranoid and trembling. But he didn't stop. The chaos felt familiar. On Christmas Eve 1980, he packed a small bag, took $50, and left Lafayette for good. His destination, Los Angeles. His childhood friend Izzy Stradlin had already gone there. Axl followed, chasing music and freedom. Los Angeles didn't welcome him kindly. He slept on benches, played guitar for coins, and ate whatever he could find. Once, a store clerk chased him out of a 7-Eleven with a butcher knife for looking too weird. Another night, a stranger offered him a place to sleep, then tried to assault him. Axl fought back with a razor. He survived. Barely. He later said that was when he truly became a musician, when the world stripped everything away, and the only thing left was the music. By 1983, Axl and Izzy formed Hollywood Rose with guitarist Chris Webber. They recorded 5 songs, played small clubs like the Troubadour, and started building a name in the underground scene. But fights, drugs, and money tore them apart. Members quit. By 1984, the band was gone. Still, Axl refused to give up. In 1985, he merged his band with another, L.A. Guns, and the name Guns N' Roses was born. Their first show was chaotic. Members came and went. Old B was fired after 1 show. Tracy Guns quit after 2 months. But on June 4, 1985, everything clicked. Slash and Steven Adler joined the lineup. 2 days later, they left for Seattle on what became known as the Hell Tour. Both vans broke down. They hitchhiked 40 hours carrying only guitars, sleeping on floors and eating out of cans. But they didn't quit. That tour forged the identity of Guns N' Roses: hungry, reckless, unstoppable. Exactly 1 year after their first show, March 26, 1986, Guns N' Roses signed a deal with Geffen Records. The contract was worth $250,000 with a $37,000 advance. Slash blew most of his share on heroin. The rest barely covered equipment and rent. No one wanted to manage them. Too volatile, too unpredictable. Tom Zutaut, the A&R man who discovered them, begged his friend Alan Niven to take them on. "This could end my career," he said. But Niven agreed. The band had raw power, the kind that couldn't be faked. They were about to change rock forever. In January 1987, they began recording Appetite for Destruction at Rumbo Recorders. The sessions were brutal. Long nights, empty bottles, and non-stop arguments. Producer Mike Klink worked 18-hour days just trying to keep the band focused. Axl insisted on perfection. He recorded every line separately, chasing emotion rather than pitch. By March, the entire record was finished. The budget ballooned to $370,000, massive for an unproven band. But when Axl stepped to the mic, everyone fell silent. His voice was unfiltered pain. The sound of every beating, every betrayal, every sleepless night turned into music. During Rocket Queen, Axl did something shocking. He invited Steven Adler's girlfriend into the studio, and together they recorded real sex sounds to layer into the track. It wasn't for shock value, it was for authenticity. To Axl, the album had to sound like life itself. Raw, uncomfortable, real. When Appetite for Destruction released, it exploded. It became the best-selling debut album in history. But fame didn't heal him, it only magnified his demons. Still, behind every scream, every lyric, and every silence, there was that boy from Indiana, the one who'd been lost, lied to, beaten, and forgotten. The world saw a rock god. But behind the gates of his Malibu mansion, Axl Rose was still searching for peace he never found. Guns N' Roses took over the world overnight. Appetite for Destruction sold millions. Sweet Child of Mine hit #1, and every magazine called them the most dangerous band in the world. But behind the stage lights, Axl was falling apart. Fame didn't heal him, it amplified his pain. He fought with Slash and Duff over drugs, stormed off stage mid-show, and got banned from venues across the U.S. He told one reporter, "I'm not crazy. I just feel everything louder than you." The success that should have saved him only made him lonelier. Every crowd chant reminded him how far he'd come and how empty he still felt inside. In 1990, Axl married Erin Everly, the woman who inspired Sweet Child O' Mine. But the fairy tale lasted only months. Their love was a battlefield, fueled by jealousy, violence, and trauma neither could escape. Axl's temper, shaped by years of abuse, boiled over in ways he didn't understand. He later confessed he'd threatened suicide on their wedding night. Erin filed for divorce, and the headlines painted Axl as unhinged. But privately, he told friends it was the first time he realized how deeply damaged he really was. Therapy began soon after, not to fix his fame, but to save his sanity. Between 1991 and 1994, the Use Your Illusion era made Guns N' Roses bigger than ever, and Axl more unstable than anyone could imagine. He arrived hours late to shows, caused riots, and fired band members one by one. Slash called him impossible. Duff said he was paranoid. But those close to him knew the truth. Therapy had opened old wounds. He was remembering what happened as a child, the kidnapping, the abuse, the darkness he had buried for decades. Fame and trauma were now intertwined. Every song became a confession. Every lyric a cry for help no one truly heard. By 1995, the empire was falling apart. Slash quit. Duff overdosed. Steven Adler was gone. The band that once ruled the world was dead, and Axl was alone. He locked himself inside his Malibu mansion, surrounded by gold records and silence. Friends said he wouldn't answer the door for months. He spent hours in his private studio recording hundreds of unfinished songs, each darker than the last. Rumors spread that he'd gone insane. But what few knew was that he was rebuilding, not his band, but himself. Between 1996 and 2005, Axl Rose disappeared. No interviews, no tours, no public appearances. The world moved on. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, new legends rose, but Axl stayed hidden behind his mansion gates. Inside, he built a home studio called The Fortress, where he experimented with new sounds, new musicians, and new identities. He'd walk barefoot through his garden at night, muttering lyrics, chasing ghosts. Former bandmates said he was obsessed with perfection, but therapists said he was finally facing his trauma. One session, one song, one breakdown at a time. The world called it insanity. He called it healing. In 2008, after nearly 15 years of silence, Axl Rose reappeared. Chinese Democracy finally dropped. The most expensive rock album ever made. Critics mocked it. Fans were divided, but Axl didn't care. For him, it wasn't about sales or fame, so it was survival. The album was a diary written in code, full of pain, forgiveness, and ghosts. On stage, he looked older, slower, but strangely peaceful. The anger was still there, but now it had purpose. He'd learned that some wars never end. They just quiet down long enough to make music. By 2016, after decades of bitterness, Axl shocked the world again. He reunited with Slash and Duff. The Not in This Lifetime tour became one of the highest-grossing tours ever. For the first time in years, fans saw the old magic return, not perfect, but real. Backstage, Slash said they barely talked about the past. They just played. Axl smiled more. He laughed. He stayed sober. The man once known for rage was finally at peace with his story. Now at 63, Axl Rose lives quietly in Malibu. He still owns his $5 million mansion, still drives his supercar, still records in secret, but he rarely leaves home. The world knows him as a rock god, but those who've looked closer know the truth. He's a survivor. A man who was broken before he was famous, who turned pain into anthems, and who faced his own darkness long before the world ever cheered his name. Behind the glasses and the red bandana lives William Bruce Rose Jr., the boy from Lafayette who lost everything, and somehow found himself through the noise. Behind the tall iron gates of his Malibu mansion, Axl Rose's world runs on a different clock. Mornings start late, sometimes not until noon, and nights stretch until dawn. The house is quiet, almost unnaturally so. The walls are lined with gold records and platinum plaques, but to him, they're just reflections of someone he used to be. His living room overlooks the ocean, but the blinds stay half closed. Some say he's hiding from the world. Others believe he's finally protecting his peace. In the rare interviews he's given since his return, Axl's voice carries a calm that once seemed impossible. He talks about meditation, about therapy, about learning to forgive people who never apologized. "You can't heal if you keep waiting for justice," he once said quietly. His words sound like lyrics now, raw, poetic, and heavy with years of unspoken pain. He still writes every day. Piles of handwritten lyrics cover his studio desk. Songs that may never be heard, about people he's lost and parts of himself he's still trying to understand. Friends say he spends hours tinkering with old recordings, remixing tracks from Chinese Democracy, layering new vocals over forgotten riffs. To outsiders, it's obsession. To him, it's peace. The same perfectionism that once destroyed his relationships has become the thing that keeps him steady. At night, neighbors sometimes hear faint guitar echoes spilling out from the open windows. Not loud, not wild, just haunting. It's the sound of a man who no longer performs for millions, but for himself. When asked if he misses the chaos and the fame, the headlines, the tours, he usually smiles and says, "I've already lived a few lifetimes." And maybe he has. The world still calls him Axl Rose, the rebel, the legend, the voice of a generation. But behind closed doors, he's just Bill again. The boy from Lafayette who finally found a way to stop running from his own noise. Even though he rarely steps into the spotlight now, Axl's voice still echoes across generations. Teenagers who weren't even born when Appetite for Destruction came out are discovering Welcome to the Jungle like it's brand new. Rock radio refuses to let go. His songs play in car rides, movies, and stadiums, reminders of a time when rock wasn't polished or safe. It was alive. It was dangerous. It was him. Streaming numbers prove it. Millions still listen every day. For a man who spent most of his life running from fame, Axl has become immortal through the very thing that once nearly destroyed him. He doesn't talk about legacy, but people close to him say he understands it now. The anger that fueled his music has turned into gratitude. He knows his voice, and the same one that screamed through decades of chaos gave a voice to those who couldn't scream for themselves. In his Malibu studio, he still experiments. Sometimes it's a new melody. Sometimes it's silence. Just him sitting in the dark, headphones on, lost in an old mix that never made it to an album. He once said, "Music was the only thing that didn't lie to me." That's why he never stopped. He might never release another record, but the songs keep coming. Like ghosts, they visit him when the world is asleep. Reminders that even pain can make something beautiful. Axl Rose never wanted to be a saint. He never wanted to be a hero. He just wanted to be free. But freedom came at a cost most people will never understand. Fame took his privacy, love tested his sanity, and childhood trauma left scars no therapy could fully erase. And yet somehow he survived. Not cleanly, not perfectly, but honestly. In therapy, he learned that his rage wasn't just anger. It was grief. Grief for the father who vanished, for the childhood stolen, for the friends who overdosed, for the version of himself that fame turned into a caricature. When people called him crazy, he didn't fight back anymore. He just said, "You don't know what I've seen." He doesn't hide from the past now, he studies it. The boy from Lafayette who was beaten, locked away, and told he'd never be anything grew into a man who defied the odds. His silence isn't fear anymore. It's peace. For the first time, he isn't trying to prove anything to anyone. He doesn't tour as often now. When he does, it's an event. Fans fly across continents just to see him. Older now, but still electric. His voice, roughened by time, carries more emotion than ever. Every lyric sounds heavier, truer, lived in. The lights dim. The crowd roars. And when Axl walks on stage, it feels like history breathing. The man who once broke microphones in rage now stands quietly for a moment before singing. Behind him, Slash smiles, the same guitarist who once swore they'd never play together again. Tuff nods. The old brothers are back, weathered but whole. And when Axl leans into the mic and starts November Rain, you can feel decades collapsing. Pain, glory, and redemption blending into one. No pyro, no chaos. Just a man and his music, closing the circle. For those in the audience, it's nostalgia. For Axl, it's closure. Every song now feels like a goodbye, but not a sad one. More like acceptance. A reminder that even legends grow old. Even rebels find peace. Sometimes, late at night, Axl drives alone through Malibu. The ocean on one side, city lights on the other. He doesn't need security anymore, no limos, no entourage. Just him and the road. He said once that driving reminds him of Lafayette, quiet, lonely, full of ghosts. He keeps an old photo in the glove box, his mother holding him as a baby. He rarely talks about her, but those close to him say he forgave her long ago. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It just meant letting go of the weight he'd carried since childhood. He visits Indiana sometimes, quietly, no cameras. Locals say he stops by old diners, walks the streets at night, and looks at the houses where everything began. To the world, he's Axl Rose. But when he's there, he's just Bill again, a boy who made peace with the ghosts that raised him. Rock and roll is quieter now. The stages are smaller, the bands fewer, but Axl's voice still cuts through time like fire through fog. He became more than a singer. He became a symbol of survival, of what it means to live with pain and still find beauty in the noise. You can hear it in every kid who picks up a guitar, dreaming of rebellion. You can see it in the way fans still raise lighters during Don't Cry. They're not just remembering a song, they're remembering him, the boy who screamed until the world listened. The man who vanished and returned a mystery, the legend who found peace not in fame but in forgiveness. When future generations talk about the golden age of rock, they'll speak of Slash's solos, Duff's bass lines, the chaos of the Sunset Strip, but at the center of it all, they'll remember that voice. That wild, broken, beautiful voice that refused to die. Axl Rose didn't just survive rock and roll. He outlived it, and somehow he made it human.